Hey, in this video, I'd like to talk about this potential $5,000 DOGE dividend and how it compares to previous stimulus checks. So the first thing that you want to remember is that Elon Musk did just respond to this potential proposed DOGE dividend, tax refund, or stimulus check, whatever you want to call it. And he said he's going to talk to the president about this potential for a $5,000 check to go to tax-paying American households. Now, this would be a little bit different than the COVID stimulus checks in that COVID stimulus checks were provided on a per-person basis. Remember, we had stimulus check number one, that was $1,200 in payments plus $500 per child, cost about $271 billion. Stimulus check number two, which cost gave $600 per person per adult and $600 per child, which cost about $141 billion. And then you had stimulus check number three, which cost $1,400 or gave $1,400 per adult and $1,400 per child, costing $401 billion. This check would be considered as being sent to each tax-paying household. And it's unclear exactly how they'll calculate what qualifies as a tax-paying household. So you'll probably see somewhere between 79 to 90 million households eligible if something like this were to happen. It would probably cost around $350 to $500 billion. Now, a lot of folks are arguing that, hey, this is fine. You're really just returning some of the money that DOGE is saving to taxpayers. See, some people look at this and say, hey, I don't want the check. Just pay down the nation's debt. Other people are like, nah, man, yeah, give the dividend to the Americans who voted for this. You know, these cuts to bureaucratic spending and whatever waste potentially Elon can find, great, give it back to Americans. Either pay down the debt or send some back or just cut taxes. So the argument here with a $5,000 potential refund is that it would only be about 20% of what DOGE is planning on saving, the Department of Governmental Efficiency. And the rest could then go to lowering taxes or paying down the debt. So on one hand, people argue, hey, only some of it is going back to you in the form of a tax refund, which could be stimulative. Of course, that drives inflation concerns. Yesterday, I talked about those inflation concerns. So watch my yesterday's video if you want to see my thoughts on what would happen with inflation. But so far, you have another cohort that's responding and saying, look, DOGE right now has claimed that they're saving $55 billion. The problem with that is they've only provided receipts for about $16 billion in savings. Now, I personally think that's still a pretty good start. $16.6 billion times 12, if you annualize it, is about $200 billion of savings for the entire year. That, though, is a far cry from even paying for these $5,000 refund checks. And then the question is, are they cutting linearly? In other words, can they continue to cut $16 to $50 billion a month? Or are they cutting the low-hanging fruit now? They save $16.6 billion, and all of a sudden we look and go, okay, I mean, even if they save $40 billion by the end of the year, that's a fraction of our government's $4 trillion in expenditures. In fact, it works out to just 1%, even 1%, if they get to $40 billion. So, and again, that's only 10% of the cost of these potential $5,000 checks. So you really have some financing problems that are probably going to brew up and come up with Congress. But of course, Congress right now is focused on the Trump tax plan, which what's fascinating here is actually enables you to raise the debt rather than pay down the debt. See, Trump right now is encouraging a $4.5 trillion tax cut plan to be passed in the House of Representatives. This contrasts with the Senate's desire to sort of do a smaller funding bill now, kick the can down the road, do a little bit of immigration, kick the can down the road on a bigger bill. Trump really wants the big, beautiful bill because it gives him his tax cuts that he's trying to provide to Americans. I think a lot of Americans voted for tax cuts. But let's think about the numbers of this tax bill for a moment. The larger bill would increase the debt ceiling of America, or America's ability to borrow, by $4 trillion. It would enable about $2 trillion in spending cuts and about $4.5 trillion in tax cuts. So if we do the math on that, if we do $4.5 trillion in spending or in tax cuts, that means the government is receiving $4.5 trillion in less money over, let's say, a 10-year period, right? If we add to that $2 trillion of spending cuts, we're still in the hole by $2.5 trillion. So far, the math on the big, beautiful bill actually increases our debt by $2.5 trillion. And that's why they're looping in an increase of the debt ceiling by $4 trillion, because people think that we're just going to have these government shutdown debates over and over and over again unless we just have a big extension of the debt ceiling. And because Republicans have control right now, they feel maybe they can push through this extension of the debt ceiling, and then they don't have to worry about a fight after midterms where it might be harder to pass that debt ceiling again. So far, the numbers that we're seeing don't really help us justify actually being able to get that $5,000 DOGE dividend per household. Because again, the numbers that DOGE is claiming it saved on its website are $55 billion. It's also, again, that's about 12-13% of what it would cost to do a $5,000 DOGE, dividend. If we did $55 billion, though, and you gave that to households, if they indeed did save $55 billion, and you just gave all of it to households, well, that'd be nice. That'd probably be somewhere around $800 per household, right? But then again, there are disputes over did they actually save that much. So far, the DOGE website only lists that they saved $16.6 billion. They have a banner that says, we've saved 55. Here are all the receipts. And then when you add up the receipts, it's like $16.6 billion. And then there's also been this drama and debate over what's going on with this $8 million or $8 billion cut. That's because one contract was entered into a government system as being worth $8 billion. People say that contract would have never cost that much. And it was later revised to $8 million. But DOGE claimed that they cut the contract, and they're using reference to the original $8 billion number that showed up. So there's a big debate about that. And that might be why there's some receipts missing. But still, 15 or 55 claimed savings to 16 that we have accounted for at this point leaves some transparency left to come. But even if they cut the full 55, it's not enough to really get more than an $800 household check, even if they gave 100% of those savings back to Americans. And so far, the big, beautiful bill probably is going to end up increasing the debt rather than reducing the debt. So while there is a lot of excitement and enthusiasm, and I'm excited and enthusiastic about this as well, I'd love to see more government waste cut, we do get some concerns that are we cutting in the right places? For example, we just heard that over the weekend, 400 probationary workers at the FAA were just fired. Now, fortunately, they were not in air traffic control positions or aviation safety inspection roles, but they were FAA workers. And frankly, the point of the entire FAA is to do with aviation and safety. So it's kind of curious exactly where they came from. But anyway, TBD. This comes at the same time that Donald Trump is planning potentially on announcing 25% tariffs on certain cars, pharmaceuticals, and chips coming April 2nd. But I don't think people really believe that those tariffs are coming. Most of the time, I just see the market buying the dip on the idea that this tariff drama is going on. It kind of reminds me of 2018, where it was logical and it made sense to buy the dip on tariff drama. So it just gives you like an excuse to find a sale. Mostly because there just really don't seem to be these major negative catalysts in the market right now or the economy. Things are just decent right now. They're pretty good. That doesn't mean there can't be a big black swan that causes a big oopsie doopsie poopsie whoopsies, but it is fascinating. So when we put all of this together, what are the odds right now of getting some kind of DOGE dividend? Well, I would say it's possible to get some form of DOGE dividend, probably closer to the end of the year. I think it might be something that actually gets included in the big, beautiful bill. See, if we're going to raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion anyway, some people argue that you could do a $2.5 trillion tax cut plan and throw a DOGE refund in there. And even though you're not cutting that full $500 billion or whatever it would cost to do DOGE dividends, it might get you votes for midterms. So maybe those refunds go out around April of 2026, right before midterms. And of course, they're branded with the Trump administration signature. So it'll be really interesting to see what ends up happening. But we've seen stimulus checks purposefully timed around elections many times before. Even Newsom did that just weeks before the recall election, sending stimulus checks to those making over $500 or making up to $500,000, which was remarkable. But and that was called the inflation relief stimulus check. You could take a look at that one in California. That probably ended up causing quite a bit of inflation. Anyway, this is the latest that we have on the DOGE dividend, the Donald Trump tax plan. We have a little bit of information that we got out of mostly some bickering about Zelensky in terms of Trump and some other news that's going on. Like Trump is apparently calling Zelensky a dictator and an okay comedian, but Zelensky is countering and saying that Trump lives in a disinformation bubble, that Russia is winning the disinformation war, and Donald Trump argues back that Zelensky's been at the negotiating table for 3 years and nothing has happened, so he shouldn't blame Donald Trump for trying to negotiate with Russia in Saudi Arabia. And even though Ukraine wasn't initially invited, now they're invited, but now Ukraine says they don't want to go because they don't want to give legitimacy to the event. A lot of drama. Excuse me. So, with that said, gotten overtaken here by the sneezes, sorry. With that said, it's also possibly worth your time watching the Trump and Musk Hannity interview. It is kind of interesting seeing the president get interviewed with Elon Musk. Donald Trump calls Elon Musk a brilliant man. Elon Musk says Trump is a good man, that he's never seen him do anything cruel or bad. In that Elon Musk ultimately has visions of wanting to die on Mars, just not on impact ideally. And Donald Trump says that Musk is helping him actually make sure that executive orders get implemented. And he's right. Executive orders can get issued, but implementation often fades. And there's often very little follow-up that these executive orders are actually getting implemented. And Donald Trump says that Elon is there to help him sort of enforce that these executive orders are happening. So I think as long as we can continue to get more transparency, the trend is in the right direction of saving money. But it'll be really interesting to see how everything develops in the way of actually creating real tangible savings that would be large enough to help pay down the debt, especially since now we're talking about increasing the debt ceiling rather than decreasing the debt ceiling. Anyway, there's the latest for you. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Good luck.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.